100 days of cruelty and stupidity and incompetence have Trump's poll numbers in the toilet, American economic numbers in decline, and the Liberal Party in Canada flying high at the polls. He did it. He made Canada great again. We'll break down the latest numbers, both political and economic, the latest combative and BS-laden Trump interview, and how you should talk about all of it. Welcome back to the podcast for the 54% of Americans who regularly vote for progress in every election and want to convince their friends and family members to join our majority. This is Majority 54.
Well, Jason, Jessica Tarloff on Fox News, I think, summed things up pretty well about these first 100 days. Let's go to the clip.
I do. I do a lot. The American public knows exactly what's going on, and that's why they're soundly rejecting this administration. He has the lowest approval rating of any president of the last 70 years for the first 100 days. His stock market for the first 100 days is the lowest since Nixon. Unprecedented low foreign policy approval rating and economic approval rating. The American public is smart enough to know that their shelves, if they're not already empty, are going to be empty because of tariffs. 69% say he's not focused enough on lowering prices. 62% focus too much on tariffs. 72% think his policies will cause a recession. 64% disapprove of how he's handling inflation. He continues to beat a drum that is making the absolute worst economic music I have ever heard in my entire life. And yes,
Ravi, before we talk about what she said, do you know Jessica Tarloff? Have you run across her at all?
No, I've heard her on a few podcasts recently, but I mean, it's a tough assignment, being on Fox News as the liberal.
The thing about this, living in this space and being active the last several years, is usually when we play, a liberal on TV doing sort of the pundit thing, either you or I or both have some sort of personal connection to them or whatever. I just want to take a moment of appreciation for Jessica Tarloff. I have never met her. I don't know that we have any mutual friends. Probably we do, but the thing because I used to, I was a commentator on CNN for a year, like as a paid commentator. And then you and I have both done MSNBC and CNN and that whole world. The thing is, when you go on Fox, I've done it a few times. I particularly did it a few times in 2020 as a surrogate for Biden. As an anecdote to make this point, I remember once being on Fox making the case for Biden, and I had forgotten to silence notifications on my computer, like push notifications. And at that time, I didn't get push notifications to my phone for my email, so I had never changed the fact that whenever I got a direct message on Twitter, it would show up as an email because it was fine because it wasn't bothering me on my phone. I forgot that it was still pushing notifications to me on my computer. And I'm using this computer, the one I'm using right now to record this show, to stream this show. I'm using it to go on Fox, right? And I'm sitting there and I'm talking. And as I'm live on Fox, I am getting little window bubbles showing up in the corner of my laptop that are direct messages I'm receiving on Twitter at the time. So I was getting real-time feedback to what I was saying on Fox, and it was pretty much 100% death threats. Okay. And so I say this to say that when you do that kind of stuff, if you spend the majority of your time on MSNBC and to some extent CNN, frankly, what you end up with is a lot of fans, right? If you're a liberal and you're doing this, a lot of people really appreciate what you're saying, and you end up with fans, and you are out in public and you meet them. If you do it only on Fox, you have all the downside. You get all the death threats. I mean, I promise you, there are a lot of people, like, I promise you, she is in danger because she does this all the time. And you get none of the upside because most of the world that would agree with her doesn't know her. Like, when she goes out, I don't think people stop her on the street in New York City very often and say how much they appreciate her because they don't see her on MSNBC or CNN. So moment of appreciation for Jessica Tarloff.
Well, it's a seat usually reserved for total spazzes like Sean Combs, there was Alan Combs, like these people who are like the Washington Generals of politics. Like they kind of tee them up to get knocked down by like 7 Republicans. And I don't know why Fox puts her on because she's good, and they generally like to make their liberals look bad.
And she's on the 5. It's a 4-on-1 battle.
Yeah,
and
unbelievable.
She ninjas him.
It's unbelievable. And I've heard her talk about this. She has to prepare a ton because she's basically doing the equivalent of the Thanksgiving conversation against highly motivated people constantly. And so she
Yes.
talks about how she has to have every little fact completely right, because you can't generalize, you can't macro bullshit when you're in the lion's den like
We
that.
need to get her on the show. Just note
Yeah.
to self, we need to
For
reach out
sure.
to her and get her on the show.
Well, big
Okay,
news
back
coming
to
out
the
this
topic.
morning, which is that since I think first time since 2022, the U.S. economy shrank, and it shrank 0.3% this quarter. It was expected to grow by 0.4%. And you compare this, Ian Sams tweeted about this. You can compare it to Europe, which saw 0.4% growth, Canada 1.7%, China 5.4%. And there is an asterisk here, because part of how they calculate this data is that there's something tricky going on with the fact that companies are stockpiling imports, and the way that the math works means that they take that into account and they count that as a negative. And if you didn't account for all the stockpiling of imports, there would be positive GDP growth. But Nate Silver, I think, summed it up well in a tweet. He said some complicated mechanics in this month's negative GDP print, which is what I just described a little bit. But he said, but bottom line is that the recession risk is up to 70%. And he tweeted a chart from Polymarket showing just an ever increasing prediction of recession, Jason.
You know what, when I was looking at what you were just describing about the way what's causing a lot of the confusion is the people stocking up, anticipating increases in prices, anticipating decreases in spending, anticipating tariffs, which are causing the increases in prices. It's like, it reminds me of, I can't speak for the rest of the country, but when we are told in Kansas City that there is a blizzard coming, or when we are told that there is a very severe summer storm coming that could cause a blackout, people go to Costco and they clean out like certain, essentials. And it's like, that's what the American public is doing. And it's having that effect on the American economy. And the reason that strikes me is because it is a direct analogy to a natural disaster, right? But in this case, there is no intervening event. The only intervening event is the economic policies of Donald Trump, and is the way Donald Trump is running the government. He is the equivalent of a natural disaster in this case.
Yeah. Well, there's been a lot of commentary about the irony of the fact that they called Harris communist in this past election. Meanwhile, Trump is probably the most central planning-ish president we've ever seen, intervening in the business life for, not even for the collective good, but really for his personal gain. There was this story out that Amazon was going to list the tariff cost as part of their breakdown of costs, which is actually pretty natural because it's a tax and they generally show you your tax. Trump went ballistic, but let's take this in phases. There was a period of time in which the White House was getting a little worked up over this. Let's go to a press briefing.
Hi, Mr. Secretary. So it was reported this morning that Amazon will soon display a little number next to the price of each product that shows how much the Trump tariffs are adding to the cost of each product. So isn't that a perfect, crystal clear demonstration that it's the American consumer and not China who is going to have to pay for these policies?
I will take this, since I just got off the phone with the president about Amazon's announcement. This is a hostile and political act by Amazon. Why didn't Amazon do this when the Biden administration hiked inflation to the highest level in 40 years? And I would also add that it's not a surprise because, as Reuters recently wrote, Amazon has partnered with a Chinese propaganda arm. So this is another reason why Americans should buy American. It's another reason why we are onshoring critical supply chains here at home to shore up our own critical supply chain and boost our own manufacturing here.
Is Jeff Bezos still a Trump supporter?
Look, I will not speak to the president's relationships with Jeff Bezos, but I will tell you that this is certainly a hostile and political action by Amazon and Secretary.
What a bunch of crap. First, the comparison to inflation under Biden, that's a market force. It's not a policy. It's not a tax. Your point is a great one, which is when you go to order something on Amazon, Amazon makes sure you know the difference between their price and the taxes, as is the case most times you buy literally anything. And, then they characterize it as a political attack, even though the head and founder of Amazon is, we're told, a supporter of President Trump, or has at least bent the knee to President Trump. They have to have an enemy. And then they just pull out some totally has nothing to do with it report that vaguely connects Amazon to some sort of, I guess, PR thing they did in China. And so, well, this is, and then we blame China. Make no mistake, like, this makes economic sense for Amazon to do. This is like, I'm sure this originated as just like a smart corporate practice. Like, you don't want your consumers to think you raised the price. A lot of people buy the same thing over and over from Amazon, right? Like, we do that. My son has a brand of protein bars he really likes. They show up at the house once a month. So we know what they cost. So if they cost more next month, we will notice that. So Amazon wants you to know we didn't do that. That is a pretty normal thing for a business to do. But in the age of Donald Trump, everything is placed in a political context and everything is given a political motivation. And therefore, this pretty normal decision for a business to make becomes a political attack on the guy whose fault it is.
Well, surprise, Amazon caved immediately. Here's President Trump talking about it.
Great. Jeff Bezos was very nice. He was terrific. He solved the problem very quickly, and he did the right thing, and he's a good guy.
Jeff Bezos, stand up for your company, man. Like, I'm the last guy to say, like, stand up for Amazon shareholders. I feel bad about how much I patronize Amazon, but they have made it where sometimes it's inconvenient not to, right? But stand up for your company, dude. That is the right decision to make for your shareholders, no question. And I'm also sad about the fact that the moment I saw this in the news and that it was announced that Amazon was considering doing it, I don't know about you, I was like, well, start the clock, because maybe 2 days before Trump calls Jeff Bezos and says, you're not allowed to do that. And then they back down. And that's what happened.
Yeah, there are so many thoughts about this. Number one, I mean, it is a marker of like the particular kind of powerful Trump is. Like, that is not the kind of thing Democrats would be able to get away with or have tried to get away with. There's probably a better way of putting it. And I think it is a reflection of what happens when you're willing to bend the machinery of state to go after anybody who disagrees with you on anything. Two is, he's only powerful if people keep caving on an individual basis, right? If Bezos sticks up for himself, Paul Weiss sticks up for themselves, you go down the list, Google, yada, 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 Meta, who's been bending the knee, trying to get favorable treatment in this antitrust case, as is Google, Apple. If they all decide not to play ball, especially with the economy being what it is, you start to force Trump's hands. But they're caving every step of the way. And it goes to show you that, like, these people who have seemingly FU money are not willing to say FU, which means they are not free. And actually, they're less powerful than we originally thought. And we should clock this, because when we take power next, we should remember both what they did and how weak they were in the face of pressure. And so when we want to try to push them to either break up monopolies or improve certain practices, we now know that we have leverage over them, and we should take a hard look at it, and also remember who was with us and who wasn't with us when the moments were hard.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think the conversation was like at Amazon after this, after Trump was calling and they were saying all this stuff? I mean, first of all, it's notable. The question was asked in that first clip of the Treasury Secretary, and the White House press secretary jumped in front of him before he could even like exhale, let alone start to speak. Like, it was like, no. The political person will be answering this question. We do not want an actual economic answer to this question, which is how they do everything. And that's like, if you're thinking about how to talk about this with friends and family and people like that, it's like, I would just say, I'm tired of politics and Trump's personal politics and personal gain being the first consideration on everything, including not just for the White House, apparently also for Amazon, right? Like, I don't know. As a consumer, I'd like to know what amount is tariffs, not just as a voter, like as a consumer, I would like to know that, just the way I'd like to know about taxes. And it dominates everything.
Well, one of the reasons why the Treasury Secretary probably didn't answer that question is because of appearances like he made on Sunday. Let's go to this clip.
Hey.
Let's talk about China. President Trump again said he's spoken to President Xi of China and negotiations are ongoing, but China has firmly denied this, saying that China and the U.S. have not consulted or negotiated on the tariff issue. So are negotiations actually happening? Who is talking?
Look, this was IMF World Bank Week, the NDC, as you know, and I had interaction with my Chinese counterparts, but it was more on the traditional things like financial stability, global economic early warnings. I don't know if President Trump has spoken with President Xi. I know they have a very good relationship and a lot of respect for each other. But again, I think that the Chinese will see that this high tariff level is unsustainable for their business
Why would
model.
they deny that the negotiations are going on?
Well, I think they're playing to a different audience.
So they're actually going on. There's actually things happening that the Chinese are just denying, but it's not true.
That we have a process in place. And again, I just believe these Chinese tariffs are unsustainable.
Ravi, let me ask you a question. We've both worked in government. You worked at the United Nations. I've worked, at high levels of state government and the military. I guess you can consider that on the federal side. When people in government, particularly high up people in government, have conversations with counterparts that affect your work, do you tend to, get readouts about it, get notes, that kind of thing?
Yeah, you know about it before, during, and after.
Yeah.
If you're a principal, like a Treasury Secretary, and it has to do with the tariff negotiations.
Yeah. See, you think maybe if the President of the United States had a negotiation type conversation, or really any conversation about anything, let alone tariffs, and you're the Treasury Secretary, you'd probably hear about it, right?
Yeah, there's also there's some interesting subtext here, which is the last point he made, which is that China's tariffs on us are unsustainable. And I'm like, I don't think people understand the difference between us and China, right? Trump ran a campaign that basically made it seem like what was a decent amount of inflation for a period of time that was coming down, and actually a historically good economy compared to the rest of the developing world, was like something akin to the Great Depression. And this was like some kind of great hardship on the American public. And now they've made that economy way worse on every measure, as we've talked about. Now, on the flip side, China is a dictatorship for which the people have a much lower standard of living, and who, whether they choose to or not, are going to be able to endure a lot more hardship than anybody in our country. So the idea that we're going to weather a storm better than a dictatorship that already has a lower quality of living and doesn't have major consumption patterns and hasn't gone through an election in which they were told that any few percentage points here or there on inflation or GDP is a huge hardship. Who would you choose in that battle? We're not stacked up pretty well. And never mind a country that also is has a president who has spurned every ally he has, and also pissed off half the country and refuses to in any way, play to half the people in his country, and has made them domestic enemies. It's like one of these two is more set up than the other for this fight ahead. Yeah,
it's like a June bug having a staring contest with a tortoise that's going to live for 100 years, right? We're operating on two different timelines, and given the fact that the Treasury Secretary is just pretending that the president may have actually talked to Xi like he says he did, and he just wouldn't know about it, means that Trump has literally made up a whole negotiation. That's not to me, that's the big takeaway here. Is Trump has caused a big problem for the average American, and it's making prices go up. And his answer to that is, no, don't worry about it. I'm on it. We're negotiating, which means he just made up the idea that he's doing anything about the problem.
It's like Ukraine, where he tweeted at Putin. We'll get to this a little bit. He tweeted at Putin over the weekend, "Stop bombing Ukraine." It's like this guy who's supposed to be Mr. Tough Guy, and stipulated that he is stronger domestically than any of us would like. Internationally, he's fairly weak.
Extremely, yeah.
One last point before we go to a break here. Trump gave a 100 days celebration speech. You know, he made it more than 20 minutes in before he even talked about the economy or tariffs. He did have time, though, to play clips of the El Salvadorian prison, to which his audience jeered and cheered. Let's go to this clip.
Kind of makes you want to throw up.
Yeah, there's now reporting, and I haven't been able to get the full readout on this, but that the U.S. has somehow formally requested that Abrego Garcia come back, which I could be cynical about this, but my sense is there's some administrative action that satisfies like the bare minimum of the Supreme Court that can save face on that, but that there's some kind of back channel being like, yeah, don't, because there's no way. We said this last week. There is 0% chance that if the Trump administration put their back into getting Abrego Garcia, that El Salvador wouldn't cave immediately. But we have more clips to react to on that front. So we'll take a break and we'll come back. Trump gave an absolutely nutty interview, I think, with ABC. And then we got some Canadians to talk about when we come back. When we relaunched this podcast, it seemed like we had to figure it all out on our own. Scripts, setups, filming schedules, logos. It was super overwhelming. And every day it seemed like we had a new decision that needed a new answer. And when you're starting off with something new, it seems like your to-do list keeps growing every day with new tasks, and that list can easily begin to overrun your life. Finding the right tool that not only helps you out, but simplifies everything can be such a game changer. For millions of businesses, that tool is Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the US, from household names like Mattel and Gymshark to brands just getting started. The MeidasTouch Network is proud to have their own store using the Shopify platform. You can get started with your own design studio with hundreds of ready-to-use templates. Shopify helps you build a beautiful online store to match your brand style, accelerate your content creation. Shopify is packed with helpful AI tools that write product descriptions, page headlines, and even enhance your product photography. Now get the word out like you have a marketing team behind you. You could easily create email and social media campaigns whenever your customers are scrolling or strolling. And best yet, Shopify is your commerce expert with world-class expertise in everything from managing inventory to international shipping to processing, returns, and beyond. Turn your business idea into with Shopify on your side. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/majority. Go to shopify.com/majority, shopify.com/majority. For men, dealing with ED can be uncomfortable, which is why HIMS provides access to a comfortable solution with an online process and personalized treatment options. HIMS is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. HIMS provides access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments like chewable tablets, Viagra, and Cialis, and their generics for up to 95% less. And the process is 100% online, so there's no need for uncomfortable doctor's visits. You just fill out an intake form on their site, and a medical provider will determine the right treatment option. If prescribed, your medication ships directly to you for free. No insurance is needed, and one low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. And with hundreds of thousands of trusted subscribers, HIMS can help you find the ED option that works for you. So start your free online visit today at hims.com/majority. That's HIMS.com/majority for your personalized ED treatment options. HIMS.com/majority. The featured products include compounded products which are not approved nor verified for safety, effectiveness, or quality by the FDA. Prescription required. See website for details, restrictions, and important safety information. Price varies based on product and subscription plan. All right. Well, Trump gave an interview that, we don't really go through every interview Trump does, but this one I think had a few gems in them that are worth unpacking. Let's start with a conversation about Abrego Garcia.
When we have criminals, murderers, criminals in this country, We have to get him out, and we're doing it.
By law.
And you'll pick out one man, but even the man that you picked out, he said he wasn't a member of a gang. And then they looked, and on his knuckles, he had MS-13.
There's a dispute.
Well, wait a minute. He had MS-13 on his knuckles tattooed.
He had some tattoos that are interpreted that way. But let's move on.
Wait a minute. Hey, Terry.
He did not have the letter MS-13.
It says MS-13.
That was Photoshopped. So let me
That was Photoshopped. Terry, you can't do that. Hey, they're giving you the big break of a lifetime. You know, you're doing the interview. I picked you because, frankly, I never heard of you, but that's okay. I picked you, Terry. But you're not being very nice. He had MS-13 tattooed.
We'll agree to disagree. I want to move on to something else.
Terry, do you want me to show you the picture?
I saw the picture.
And you think it was Photoshop? Well,
here we go.
Don't Photoshop it. Go look at his hand. He had MS-13.
He did have tattoos that can be interpreted that way. I'm not an expert on them. I want to turn to Ukraine, sir. I want to get to Ukraine.
No. He had MS as clear as you can be, not interpreted. This is why people no longer believe the news.
I think if you go a little bit longer, maybe he said it and I missed it. Terry says, well, they're not there in El Salvador on his hand. Like we've seen his hands in real life. I don't know, man. It's just so frustrating to realize that the president of the United States is one of the people who have been, he's radicalizing people, and he's one of the people who has been radicalized and falls for crap like this. Like, it's just, he's in many ways no different than, your third cousin who went down a rabbit hole and now their Facebook is just like bananas. He's that person.
I almost don't know what to say about it. It's like, if he's this stubborn and off about this one obvious detail, it's like, what else is going on behind the scenes? Where is this guy getting his information from? He was later asked whether he can bring Abrego back per our earlier conversation. Let's look at this clip.
We're not being treated fairly by all judges.
Oh, that's a subject. So you're saying that you don't like some of the rulings, some of the court orders?
I think the rulings will be overturned, yeah.
All right. Well, let me ask you about one man and one court order. Kilmar Abrego Garcia. He's the Salvadoran man who crossed into this country illegally, but who is under a protective order that he not be sent back to El Salvador. Your government sent him back to El Salvador and acknowledged in court that was a mistake. And now the Supreme Court has upheld an order that you must return him facilitate his return to the United States. What are you doing to comply?
Well, the lawyer that said it was a mistake was here a long time, was not appointed by us, should not have said that, And just so you understand, the person that you're talking about, you're making this person sound, this is a MS-13 gang member, a tough cookie, been in lots of skirmishes, beat the hell out of his wife, and the wife was petrified to even talk about him, okay? This is not an innocent, wonderful gentleman from Maryland.
I'm not saying he's a good guy. It's about the rule of law. The order from the Supreme Court stands, sir.
He came into our country illegally.
You could get him back. There's a phone on this desk.
I could.
You could pick it up, and with all the power of the presidency, you could call up the president of El Salvador and say, send him back right now.
And if he were the gentleman that you say he is, I would do that.
But the court has ordered you to facilitate that.
I'm not the one making this decision. We have lawyers that don't want to do this.
But the buck stops in this office.
No. I follow the law. You want me to follow the law? If I were the president that just wanted to do anything, I'd probably keep him right where he is.
Supreme Court says what the law.
I'm always saying on this show, I'm always telling people, like, as they try and talk to people who disagree with them, that you're never going to have like a few good men. You ordered the code red, didn't you? And you're damn right I did. It's never really, but with Trump, it kind of happens sometimes. And Terry Moran, and that's his name, right? I think.
Yeah, it's Terry Moran. Yeah.
Did a great job of like, he framed that to him in a way that played to his ego, pointed at the phone and said, if you wanted to get, because remember, up until this point, the whole BS facade that the White House has put out there has been, well, even if we wanted to, we couldn't get him back now. When in reality, he's down there because they asked that he be taken down there, and the president of El Salvador would send the dude here in a second if they told him to. But Trump, because he said, you are very powerful, you could get this guy back, he got Trump to do it. Yes, I could. And then about 30 seconds later, Trump realizes what happened, and he starts to say, well, I'm just trying to follow the law. We have lawyers who are looking into that. I mean, awful.
Unbelievable. Well, here's another clip here that I have two conflicting thoughts about. Let's go to this clip.
Concern out there. People are worried. Even some people who voted for you saying, I didn't sign up for this. So how do you answer those concerns?
Well, they did sign up for it, actually, and this is what I campaigned on. I said that we've been abused by other countries at levels that nobody's ever seen before. We were losing $3 to $5 billion a day on trade.
So I have two thoughts about this. One thought is politically, you didn't sign up for this is very helpful. Like you want people to think that it's a very helpful way to talk to people because it gives them a permission structure to change their mind.
I was just going to say permission structure. Yes.
But on the second hand, they did sign up for this. Like everything about Trump was heading in this direction. Indicted in 4 different jurisdictions. Everything about January 6th, all the lies he told, everything he had to say about tariffs, everything he said about retribution and vengeance. I could go on and on and on. You did sign up for this if you voted for Trump. And I know this is majority 54, and this is about the messages that are most persuasive. This is not what I'd lead with my relatives. But at the same time, everybody's adults. You have a phone, a newspaper. You watch Trump. You can use your own judgment. And people had plenty of information to tell them that this is the real Trump. That is not the helpful political argument to make, but I think that's the big boy and big gal conversation for people who did go into that voting booth and vote for him. It's like, I don't want to absolve them of the consequences of this decision that we're all having to live with.
I guess it would be more accurate to say you failed to realize what you were signing up for, or you underestimated what you were signing up for. Would be probably closer to the truth, but you're right. It won't get us anywhere to tell people this is your fault. And it is nice if you were to take that and you were to play it, as audio over, like if you're thinking in old school political ads, which I think are less effective than they've ever been. But if you're thinking in those terms, play it, over a screen that is showing people experiencing economic hardship, showing on the screen the economic numbers and the results of them. I think you would cut it off just when he says, well, they did sign up for this. Because you're right. It does create a permission structure to say, you don't have to own your own mistake in order to make a different decision next time.
Right. And he's in full-blown denial. He was asked about tourism, and I thought this was a particularly defensive answer.
And Canadians, many of them, are really angry, furious about your talk about we're going to take over Canada, is going to become the 51st state. And it kind of is of a piece. A lot of travel is down into the United States from around the world. It feels like there's been reputational damage.
The country's doing great. Well, prices are down.
Not the tourism.
Gasoline's down. Energy's down. Tourism is going to be way up. Wait till you see the numbers. The tourism is way up.
Not now.
Now, Canada, tourism's doing very well. We're doing very well. We're doing very well. Wait till you see the real numbers come out in 6 months from now. Wait till you see the numbers.
But do you think, I'm going to ask you, if I may, do you think that...
Ravi, what do you think are the chances that Donald Trump has seen any tourism indicators or asked about any tourism indicators?
No, and it's not as dramatic as you think yet. I think you're going to get the big hit in the summer. I think international arrivals are down 10% this month. So it's definitely not up.
Know that. What do you think are the chances my point is, like, governors tend to know what the tourism numbers are in their state. Presidents probably don't usually know right off the top of their head how tourism is going because it's not one of their top concerns. But like, that's Trump, man. He just redefines success entirely and then live in a fiction and just say like, oh yeah. No, what are you talking about? Tourism is great. And in 6 months, you're going to see, like, totally pulled out of thin air. Obviously, it's the same move forever.
Well, one last clip here from this interview. This is on Putin and Russia.
That he's willing to stop the fighting. Don't forget,
you think he wants peace? You think Vladimir Putin wants peace?
I think he does, yes. I think he does. I think
even with the raining missiles
I think he really, his dream was to take over the whole country.
I think because of me, he's not going to do that.
Do you trust him?
I think.
Do you trust him?
I don't trust you. I don't trust a lot of people. I don't trust you. Look at you. You come in all shooting for bear. You're so happy to do the interview.
I am
And
happy.
then you start hitting me with fake questions. You start telling me that a guy whose hand is covered
All
with
right,
a
we're back to
tattoo doesn't have the tattoo. You know.
All right.
I mean, you're being dishonest.
No, I'm not.
Let me
No, I
just
am
tell
not,
you,
sir.
do I trust? I don't trust a lot of people, but I do think this. I think that let's say he respects me. And I believe because of me, he's not going to take over the whole. But his decision, his choice would be to take over all of Ukraine.
Okay.
It's funny to me that it's just a verbal tick at this point that Trump just attacks the interviewers in totally baseless ways. And it's like nobody even talks about it anymore. It's just like, okay, there's going to be the 30 seconds where he's like, I don't trust you. What are you doing? Your fake questions. And it's almost like you just learn to ignore it. You're like, yeah, well, it's not worth our time anymore. These crazy outbursts.
You realize it's a tactic, and if you engage, he wants you to engage in it, so you don't ask any substantive questions,
Right.
and then it becomes him against them. And so, if we are to take Donald Trump's viewpoint on this, the reason that Vladimir Putin is going to be unsuccessful in taking the entirety of Ukraine is as a favor to Donald Trump, and not due to the people of Ukraine and their military and the tens of thousands of them who have given their lives in the battle. That's not why Putin is not going to take the whole country. It's just because he respects Donald Trump.
Yeah.
That's something. That is. Oh, also, by the way, we're now totally, as Trump does and everything else, we're redefining success on the fly. We're now redefining success not as does Putin leave Ukraine? Does he stop trying to take it's does he only invade and hold and capture and keep forever, like whatever it is? It's like what, 20% of this democratic free country that neighbors his. Like, that's not how we defined things like in the Gulf War. We weren't like, hey, Saddam, you can have this much of Kuwait's oil capacity, and you can take basically, prisoner essentially this many Kuwaitis, and that's success for us. So Donald Trump, his thing is he redefines success after failure, and in this case, he does it even in the context of war.
Yeah, I want to really speak to my libertarian friends out there. What did you get from this? For those who, there's plenty of principled libertarians who voted against Trump, and for those people, congratulations on your consistency and for being on the right side of this. But for the many people who claim to be a little libertarian, you now have the largest tax increase in history with the tariffs. You have by far the greatest assaults on free speech and private enterprise. We just saw a bit of the private enterprise part with Amazon. Free speech won't even have to go into, right? From a president. Then you have wars. Like, these wars are supposed to end. Ukraine is as bad as it's been. You've got, Jared Kushner measuring the drapes in Gaza and talking about redeveloping Gaza. You're arresting pro-Palestinian protesters on the streets of the United States. You're talking about annexing Greenland and taking over Canada and the Panama Canal. Like, libertarians, what is it that you wanted? You got a little bit of Doge cuts combined with actually massive increases to the U.S. deficit that are going to have to be paid for at some point. Like, really, what's libertarian about this presidency?
As Jeremy points out to us right here, Trump promised that there would be a libertarian in his cabinet, which he has not done, and for good reason, right? Because a libertarian in the cabinet would really spoil all this stuff. A libertarian a true dedicated libertarian would resign in protest and would do it loudly.
Well, we're going to take one more break, and when we come back, we're going to head up north to Canada, eh?
If you've ever searched for your name or address in Google, it's shocking to find how many results have your personal information, and it's not by chance. Data brokers and people search sites collect your personal information, your name, address, phone number, financial info, income, and hundreds of other records. They sell and share it publicly without your consent But Incogni is here to put an end to that. It hunts down these unethical sites and it gets your info removed from the places that expose your private information. You don't have to email anyone, fill out forms, or jump through hoops. They handle the entire process for you. Incogni also continuously monitors if your data is put back onto those databases, requesting repeated removals. This way, keeping them off it forever. So you get way less spam calls, spam emails, and you get more peace of mind. And best of all, you can cancel anytime, and they offer a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you can get it completely risk-free. Right now, you can get 60% off an annual plan by going to incogni.com and use code majority54. That's incogni.com/majority54, and use the code majority54 at checkout. Take your personal data back with Incogni. Get 60% off an annual plan at incogni.com/majority54 and use code majority54 at checkout. My dad always likes to say, aging is not for wimps. And boy, is that right. Lately I've been having this thing happen. I don't know if you've experienced this, where I have a dream, and in the dream, I'm like perpetually 25. Like in all my dreams, I'm 25 years old. And now that I'm about to turn 44, sometimes when I wake up from those dreams, it is shocking. And then I get up in the morning and things hurt more than they did at 25. So yes, I do think about aging a lot. And I'm so excited to share with you guys C15 from Fatty 15, the first essential fatty acid to be discovered in more than 90 years. It's an incredible scientific breakthrough to support our long-term health and wellness, and you guessed it, aging and longevity. Based on over 100 studies, we now know that C15 strengthens our cells and is a key longevity-enhancing nutrient, which helps to slow biological aging at the cellular level. In fact, when our cells don't have enough C15, they become fragile and age faster. When our cells age, our bodies age too. This eventually led to studies finding the first new nutritional deficiency in 75 years called cellular fragility syndrome, caused by a lack of the essential fatty acid C15. As many as 1 in 3 people worldwide may have low C15 levels in cellular fragility syndrome. To help fix cellular fragility syndrome and further extend our health and longevity, a team of doctors working in collaboration with the U.S. Navy spent over a decade to develop the pure, optimized, and bioavailable C15 to zero ingredient and Fatty 15. Thankfully, Fatty 15 repairs age-related damage to cells, protects them from future breakdown, and activates pathways in the body that help regulate our sleep, mood, and natural repair mechanisms that support our overall health. This functionality leads to so many other exciting benefits now and as we get older. In fact, 72% of Fatty 15 customers report seeing or feeling benefits within 16 weeks, including improved metabolic, liver, and heart health, smoother functioning joints, deeper sleep or healthier hair, skin, and nails. Now that's essential. Best of all, Fatty 15 comes in a gorgeous reusable glass and bamboo jar, and refills are shipped right to your door. Fatty 15 is on a mission to optimize your C15 levels to help you live healthier, longer. You can get an additional 15% off their 90-day subscription starter kit by going to fatty15.com/majority and using code majority at checkout.
Canada. I mean, this is quite the comeback. I don't know if we've ever seen one like this. So, and this is from a tweet I'll read here. So January 6, 2025, not too long ago, Liberals were down 24 points in the polls. To put that in context, we have literally never seen a 24-point deficit, I believe, in our lifetime in any presidential election. And if it happened, it would have happened a long time ago. Then, after January 6, 2025, Trudeau resigns. The day after that, Trump says he was going to annex Canada using economic force. In comes Mark Carney, who's an incredibly impressive guy who almost seems like he's designed for this moment, has experience in the world of international trade and finance, and presented a huge contrast to Trudeau, who, to Trudeau's credit, Trudeau stepped aside and really gave Carney room to run in this very short period of time. And let's just play Carney's ad here to get a sense of what his message was.
I know people are anxious right now. The crisis in the United States doesn't stop at their borders.
Now an imminent threat for Canada's economy.
5% tariffs on all goods. Beginning to feel like 2008.
They can become divided and weak. But this is Canada. And we decide what happens here. Let's choose to be united and strong. Canada strong.
The crisis in the U.S. so embarrassing. It's like we're like Greece or something. It's like, you know, like the crisis all the way down there in the U.S. is not going to stop at their borders. It should be. I should note that although they will be returning to power for a fourth consecutive term, they will be leading a minority government. But heck, when you're down 24 points, you take what you can get.
Also, it's just wild to see, because that ad closes with the name of the party really big, and it just says liberal, and it's just wild, man, to see, you know, somebody just leaning into that word in their politics. We're the liberals.
Yeah, and it's worth saying that conservatives up in Canada are not conservatives here, and liberals there aren't liberals here. And I imagine a lot of moderates in this country would probably lean conservative in Canada, just given like the differences between the two countries. But all
It
that
still
being
means left. It may as well just say left, and that's my
for
point.
sure.
Like,
I think it gives you hope that a couple things. Number one, that people north of our borders are seeing it for what it is and standing up for themselves. Like as much as I hate that we're the ones who are bullying them, it is good to see that in contrast to Amazon and Paul Weiss and institutions like that, like countries are standing up for themselves pretty well here across the world. And then two is that you could turn things around really fast. You can even turn around the brand of a party very fast if you have the right leader. So people should keep that in mind. I can't tell you the amount of pessimistic conversations I have with people who be like, the Democrats, they'll never learn. And people who listen to this podcast long enough know that I will be negative at times. But the one thing I'm optimistic about is that in the power of one nomination of a leader to completely change the perception of a party. And I look ahead to the next election and say, if we get that decision right, then a lot of the mistakes can be wiped away with a new leader, and all focus will be on that person and their vision, and they could take the party in their own direction.
And the power of one really crappy leader on the other side.
Yes.
To assist in the comeback of the opposition, and to just crater their own side. Because remember, as we've been saying, Trump doesn't care about anybody other than himself. He does not care about the Republican Party. He does not care what happens in the midterms. He doesn't care about any of those things. And he looks at what's going on and he just says these polls are fake, and that's going to be a huge problem for them. I had a family member visit recently, about 3 weeks ago, who lives on one of the coasts, and she asked my dad and I, she's like, do you think it's ever like going to come back our way? She's a little older. She's, older, a generation older than me, but she was like, in our lifetime, will it ever come back? And my dad and I were like, oh, it easily could. Like, it was a close election, and these things swing quickly in America. It's not to say that we're not in a crisis. It's not to say that scary things are not happening and people aren't being hurt. That's absolutely happening, but there's nothing permanent about what's happening. Not yet, anyway.
Yeah, and you might be more careful about this given your profile, but I've learned over the past few months, if not years, that there are limits to my patriotism. Or at least I have a different interpretation of it than I used to.
Yeah, not about patriotism being limited. It's about, what are you patriotic to?
Yeah, and it's like, I grew up, my mom would take me to the 4th of July parade. I was always about just whatever. We're in a sporting competition, we're in a war, whatever it is, I want us to win, whatever we're doing. I want us to be the best at everything. And I'll debate whether what we did was good or bad, and like historically, or the Iraq War, which I was very much against. But in the end, I'm always waving the flag and supporting us no matter what. I would say it has gotten harder to be consistent in that realm when we're being so effing obnoxious. It does remind me in a way of the Iraq War period of time, where we were so wrong and dragging our allies into fights that they had no business being involved in. By the way, a lot of the same allies that we're now spurning now, who were with us before. If you remember Canada, even and Australia, a lot of these countries that we're crapping on now basically said, we don't believe in these wars, whether it was Afghanistan or Iraq, depending on what we're talking about, but that we are always there for our friends. It was language like that, right? Mm-hmm. So when I see people upset at us, I'm more sympathetic to them than I am our president and our leadership on a lot of these issues. And that's a hard place to be in because it affects, we talk about this on The Game Within, our sports podcast, which you should subscribe to wherever you get your podcasts. But it makes it hard when these sporting events, people are booing us. And I'm like, I don't like our country being booed. But if I were in the other position, I would be so angry. I would be booing us too.
Yeah, it's not your fault that you're feeling that way. Trump has gone out of his way to make everybody make a choice between being patriotic or being critical of the government, right? Because he's the government. What he wants is, while he is the government, he wants to merge decisions made by him and him with patriotism. Like, and you're right to compare it to the Iraq War, because W did the same thing when you're either with us or you're against us to the rest of the world, right? They went out of their way to say that anybody who was criticizing that war was against the troops. It was a pretty big deal. They were trying to do that you don't support the troops if you don't support the war. And that was BS then, and it's BS. It's certainly BS to say if you don't support these economic policies and these super cruel and ridiculous policies that deprive people of due process and ship them to prisons in other nations unlawfully, that you therefore aren't a patriot. Like, that's what they're trying to do. And the natural result of that is going to create tension for anybody who wants to be patriotic.
John King had a great segment leading into the election. I think captures the mood on the ground in Canada. Let's go to this clip.
I'm going to speak a sentence you will never hear in the United States. There's a big national election, and Donald Trump is by far the most unifying force. You speak to voters in Canada, and they can be conservative, they can be liberal, they can even be more to the left of the Liberal Party, support the New Democrats or support the Green Party. Listen here, 3 different voters, this is in Ontario, say, what's your number one issue in this election? Donald Trump.
It's more Donald Trump. I feel like he's a bully in this situation. We're supposed to be allies. We thought we're on like a friendship level.
We're just sick of him. And it's only been 3 months into the term. I never thought I would put up a Canadian flag, but I think when it comes down to crunch time, Canadians really gather up.
There is no friends no more. The biggest thing in Canada is we have friends all over the world. How many friends does Americans have right now?
Brutal.
You know what's an interesting bookend of that clip to what you and I were just talking about is the thing where we constantly fly the flag. That is a uniquely American thing. And, when you go to Europe, like, I was in Paris, not during the Olympics, but pretty soon after the Olympics. There weren't that many French flags up. We were in London right before that. You go to London all the time. You don't see a lot of British flags. I think it's cool that we it's part of our culture, but that's why it's interesting that you have that Canadian guy saying, I never thought I'd put up a Canadian. He's not saying like he hates his country. He's just saying like, that's not a thing we do here.
Yeah.
But it has caused them to feel more patriotic on the reverse end.
Yeah. And what was also interesting is the mechanics of the election here. Ian Bremmer tweeted, free and fair elections in Canada. Campaigns a few weeks long, not very expensive. Ballots counted the same day. Nobody contests the outcome. When democracies work, they're the best political system we have. I think that's a good moment of zen to end on for today. Let's go to one for us, Jason. What's happening in your world?
Not that much. Diana's been traveling a fair amount, and I am, just balancing the whole be the dad with the 2 kids. And so morning, people listening could probably I've just had one of those periods of time where I'm like, man, single parents, I don't understand how they do it. Because Diana's gone right now about 2 days a week traveling for her work. And boy, those 2 mornings are my most stressful mornings. And those 2 bedtimes are my most stressful bedtimes and with the kids. And I try to continue to be a really good, sweet dad during that period, but man, it gets tough. So shout out to all the single parents who actually do it for real. I just pretend a couple days a week, and it's really hard.
Shout out to Eileen Gupta, raised 3 of us.
Yeah,
in
man.
20s on our own. I don't know how it happens. Unbelievable. I'm over in East Tennessee at Power Monkey Camp. And there's at least one listener. There's this guy, Shane DeFreitas here, who is a former Olympic gymnast, who is part of the coaching staff over here, and he came up to me and he was like, "Are you Ravi Gupta?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, I was in my gym in Montana, and I was about to. It was like on my last day before I headed out here, and I told the gym I was coming here. And one guy was like, "Oh, you're going to the same place that Ravi Gupta's going to." I listen to Majority 54. So whoever you are, Montana listener, at Shane DeFreitas' gym, shout out to you. I'm in this place where I think my read on it is more than half of the people at this camp don't share my politics, and it has been a delicate balancing act to try to avoid politics. But it's so weird when your career is attached to it. So how do you describe what you do?
Right.
It's very hard. So I'm trying to navigate it to the best of my ability. I actually stopped at a Subway somewhere between Nashville and where I am right now, which is in the Cookeville, Crossville area of Tennessee. And there were, I think, 5 people in the Subway. Every one of them had some visible MAGA like shirt or something on. And it goes to show you the power of that movement. That's just on a normal day. You know, that's like a normal Sunday. No election going on right now. It's just how people identify.
So what do you say when people ask, what do you do when you want to not start a conversation about politics?
Well, I will say I run a media company. And then people, when I'm traveling, I just say I'm a lawyer, which is just a straight lie, but it's just an easy way.
It's technically true.
I'm either a lawyer, but not an attorney, or an attorney, not a lawyer. One of the two, because I didn't take the bar. But and then they'll be like, "Well, what kind of stuff do you work on?" I'll be like, "This is the truth." I'll be like, "I try to bring people together across the political divide." I tell them about the New Orleans project, and I do not mention this podcast unless I get a strong sense that they're liberals. I was talking to this woman at lunch the other day who was like, we're having like a good conversation. I won't say where she's from because I don't want her to get back to her. But I was like, thought we were connecting. And then she's talking about COVID, and she made very clear that she really hated the lockdowns, which actually she and I are on the same page about. But I could tell immediately that at that point, when she started to figure out I work for Obama and stuff like that, like that there was no bridging some of the judgment that was coming my way, even though like for a Democrat, I'm fairly libertarian on that stuff, especially looking back. I will admit onto some things that I could have done differently, but it immediately screwed up the conversation when she realized I worked for Obama and all this. She really was judging me. It slowed things down a lot, you know?
I have the crutch of, for you, like podcasting is your main occupation.
You have
like,
veteran stuff. That's where you try.
So I have the crutch of, I just say, well, I work at a veterans nonprofit, but then sometimes it'll one way or another come up in conversation that I have a podcast with somebody who doesn't know what it is. And so then they say, what's your podcast about? So you can use this if you like. Now, if it's somebody I want to have a conversation with, as is often the case for both of us, because we try and live the mission of the show, then I just say what it's about. But if it's a situation where it's like another parent at like a school thing or a youth sports thing, and it's like, this is not the time and place, what I usually say is I say, it's a podcast about how people can have conversations even though they disagree politically.
Yeah, I like that.
And then people are like, oh, well, that's great, no matter what.
And then they listen and they're like, uh-oh. Yeah, I find that sometimes I'm in these conversations and I actually give away too much. Like I'm too agreeable. I'm the opposite of what I would have been 10 years ago. Like 10 years ago, I'm coming in, I want to debate, I want to figure out what's going on. Now I'm like criticizing my own side a lot and all that to try to like get along with people. Be like, yeah, like whatever, we're gonna. And then I think back on it, and I'm like, yeah, that wasn't.
Yeah, I didn't need to give so much.
I didn't feel good about that.
I leaned too hard into establishing credibility with the person, and then didn't.
Yeah. I do that too much these days. That's my big problem right now.
Yeah, that's fair. I probably do too much of like letting stuff slide because I just whatever. That's what they're gonna say. They're not fixable. Like that person's not persuadable, so I'm gonna move on. But I don't do it. And sometimes Diana's like, you didn't need to start in on that person.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, thanks everybody for listening. A reminder that we have this other show that most of the Majority 54 folks who have gone to check out have really liked, which is about the intersection of sports and politics, and it's called The Game Within. It's on the Valor Media Network. It streams live on Tuesday afternoons, drops an audio on Tuesday evening. So wherever you get your podcast, look up The Game Within and you'll find us. You can find me at Jason Kander on everything social media. You can find Ravi at Ravi M. Gupta on everything social media. As always, please leave a 5-star review. Thank you to the Meidas Mighty. Remember, we all have a platform. Make sure to use yours today.